Hey, what's up, friends? It's ill.Gates coming at you from the lab here at Producer Dojo. I just wanted to take a minute to make a video to everybody, just kind of addressing current events and really where my head's at. Because I know it's a really hard time for a lot of people out there in the community. We're all reeling from the evidence against the Bassnectar Instagram and kind of the fallout from a lot of that. And I just really want to be super clear with everybody and let you know kind of where my head's at and what my thoughts and feelings are, and to see if I could help healing out there, because I know a lot of people are really hurting, myself included. So when the evidence against Bassnectar Instagram first started coming out, I didn't really take the allegations very seriously, because it seemed like the whole thing was basically like a takedown attempt. There was a lot of either fabrications or things that were not being presented in a balanced way, and that made me discount the whole project. I also was very, very reluctant to believe that someone that I cared about so much and someone that was such an intimate part of my life and my musical development could have engaged in, abuse of women, especially someone who went around claiming to be a feminist and was so outspoken about feminist issues as well as other political issues, and was so frequently found on the right side of history, and so frequently put a lot of hard work and passion and people power behind causes of social justice, such as anti-racism and engaging young people in the political process. And I think that it is important to recognize that Lauren and the Bassnectar Project did a lot of good in the world, and that as much as the further evidence indicates that Lauren had some very problematic relationships with women, and especially some problematic relationships with just taking accountability for his actions, as much as that was a problem, I think it's important to recognize that he made a lot of beautiful music. He made a lot of people really happy, and he did a lot of good in the world, and that the whole Bassnectar Project really was, I think, ultimately a very positive thing. I think it's ultimately a very, very positive thing, and it's not something that I am ashamed to have been a part of. It's something that I'm proud to have been a part of, and I think that those of you in the community who put your hearts and souls into that project should not be ashamed of what you did, because there was no way for us to know what was going on in secret, and there was no way for us to know really anything about Lauren's private life, because it was just that, private. So anyway, back to what actually is alleged and what we can learn from the evidence that we have. So now, I had been really hesitant to believe anything coming out of that Instagram account because of the clear bias that was exhibited in many of the posts, and is still exhibited in many of the posts, even the ones after the evidence that I felt convinced by. I've seen posts since then that have been very misrepresentative of the facts and have been very skewed and misleading in their presentation. But basically I had spoken to Lauren about this on the phone, and he, in that phone call, had really convinced me that this was an organized kind of takedown attempt. And I mean, that is exactly what it is. It was a takedown attempt. And I had always known him to be you know, pretty upstanding with the way he treated most people. He could be at times manipulative. He's very good at getting what he wants out of people. He's very good at making people feel the things that he needs them to feel to serve his agenda. I don't know whether he does it consciously or not, but he can be a very manipulative person, and he is certainly a very persuasive and very charismatic person. So, you know, when you're having any kind of a discussion with him, whether you're a fellow artist or just a normal person having a conversation with him, you gotta understand he's a very charismatic person. He's a very intelligent person. He's a very persuasive person. And he's very good at making people, you know, he's very good at telling people what they want to hear and making them feel the way he needs them to feel to get what he wants. Okay, so I don't know how much of this is conscious or unconscious, but you got to understand most people are at a disadvantage just in terms of intelligence and communication ability and the ability to be persuasive. Most people are at a very strong disadvantage when communicating with him. He also is very successful, you know, and very, like, he made a lot of money, and he really is a very powerful person. So when a person like that has a taste for younger women that are, you know, in the age range of 18, 19, if you're being generous, when a person like that has a taste for women who are at a point in their life where they're not economically developed, they're not, you know, they haven't had as much life experience as, you know, 30-plus-year-old man, especially a man who's had such a rich and storied life as Lauren. And when they're coming into a relationship with him where he is this famous rock star with all kinds of money and power and social influence, and people looked upon him as a god, you know? So I think it's really, you know, there's a power dynamic there that is just already problematic. And if you're 18, you are old enough to be able to vote or smoke cigarettes or go to war or drive a car or go into credit card debt, you know. The age of 18 is certainly the age of consent. Now, there can be problems going into a relationship with such a lopsided power dynamic, even if you are above 18, but it's not necessarily illegal. It could be abusive, it could be coercive, it could be an unhealthy relationship, but it's not necessarily illegal. But relationships with such a lopsided power dynamic do lend themselves to abuse. And that was really my kind of main concern, was that Lauren could be abusing his position and abusing his power in these relationships. So I was concerned about that, but I was like, look, you know, that's not necessarily totally evil. Like, that just could be a kind of byproduct of the power dynamics inherent in the situation. And also that if the women are of the age of consent and they enter into a problematic relationship, a lot of people of the age of consent have problematic relationships, right? But my main issue was during the course of the emergence of some of the evidence against Bassnectar, it was revealed that he was having inappropriate communications with women who are purported to be under the age of consent, sending very manipulative and flirty emails to people who are alleged to be underage. So that was where the red flags started going up for me. Then there was some audio of Lauren engaging in behavior that seemed a lot like grooming, saying some very manipulative things to someone who is obviously much younger than him, You know, in the audio, it's impossible to tell how old that person was, but the things that he was saying were pretty textbook kind of grooming. Whether that person was of the age of consent or not, seemed pretty manipulative. So that was really where the red flags started going up. But at that point, I was still defending him, saying, hey, he hasn't done anything that's clearly abusive, and we should give him the benefit of the doubt, especially given how much good he's done in the world. But then there was an audio that was revealed where Lauren had made the effort to call in his partners in the past and to talk to them and address their emotions and be accountable. And this young woman was speaking to him, and she was asking him about a relationship that they had had when she was 17 and he was in his 30s and a famous touring rock star and such. And in that conversation, she basically asks him directly if the ages in their relationship meant that it was technically a statutory rape. And Lauren did not deny this. If the ages were not the ages where it was a statutory rape, you would think that if a person asks you, is this statutory rape? And it's not statutory rape, you would think the reply would be, no, that's not statutory rape. I would like to be accountable to you and talk about your feelings, but that was not, in fact, statutory rape. You'd think that that would be how a person would respond. So but even at that point, you still got it. It's innocent until proven guilty. So you still got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just caught off guard. Maybe he was just, he didn't want to belabor that point or get into a conflict there. So you still got to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But when he then said that he wanted to be accountable to this woman, her name seems to be Rachel, when he said, I want to be accountable to you, but if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to get sodomized and beaten to death. Do you want that? Do you want that to happen? That was where I drew the line, because in doing that, he was essentially, again, manipulating this woman into further silence, manipulating this woman into enabling his abuse, manipulating this woman into going along with his abuse. And that, to me, was where the line was crossed, because that reaction is not coming from a place of accountability. It's not coming from a place of transparency. It is not coming from a place of compassion towards this woman. It is just coming from a place of self-preservation at any cost. And that, to me, is abuse. That, to me, is very clear-cut abuse. So that was where I drew the line, and I found his behavior indefensible, and that was why I posted that was a clear-cut case of abuse. Now, whether it was actually illegal or not, I don't know. Whether that completely invalidates everything good that Lauren did, I don't think it does. I think that we must all concede that he did a lot of good in the world, that he made a lot of people happy, and we must all, recognize that the Bassnectar project was a beautiful thing. It was a wonderful thing to be a part of, and as much as I feel the memories of it are tainted by these recent revelations, and we'll see what the final outcome of it all is. I don't regret being a participant in it. I don't condone abuse. I stand with the victims of abuse. I stand with the Me Too movement. I don't condone any of that problematic behavior, because I feel electronic music has always been an escape from the kind of awful realities of humanity. And it has been a vehicle for us to connect to faith in the future, you know, for us to really find a shared faith in the future through technology and through creativity and through the social filter and tribe building that electronic music and, you know, really underground music can provide, you know. And I think that the Bassnectar project, shining example of that role in our culture. And Lauren, for all of his flaws, is a great leader. You know, he's a great leader. And a lot of these great leaders in history have had problematic relationships with women and problematic relationships with other disadvantaged categories of humanity. I mean, Bob Marley, for example, was homophobic. Martin Luther King cheated on his wife. Gandhi was pretty much a pedophile and also said some pretty racist things that are definitely not acceptable. JFK was a womanizer. The Beatles, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin, Motley Crue, all engaged in far more problematic behavior with women, especially underage women, than Lauren has. And, you know, Motley Crue, even in their book, describe terrible relationships with women. And do we cancel Motley Crue? You know, do we cancel David Bowie? Do we cancel the Beatles? If we're going to be real, we got to recognize that the standard we are holding Bassnectar to is not the same standard that we are holding everyone else to. It's not the standard that we're holding Chris Brown to. It's not the standard that we're holding the president to. And it's not the standard that we're holding the Catholic Church to. You know, so I think that as important as it is to stand with the victims of sexual abuse, as important as it is to support the Me Too movement, we must also recognize that there are gradations on the scale of problematic behavior, that a manipulator is not the same as an abuser is not the same as a rapist is not the same as a murderer is not the same as a serial killer, and a serial killer is not the same as a genocidal dictator. There are levels to this shit, okay? It is definitely not acceptable to manipulate women. It's not acceptable to abuse your position of authority. You know, Monica Lewinsky, for example, was over the age of consent when she was manipulated by President Clinton into performing sex acts with him. She was 23 at the time, you know, but it is still problematic because she was an intern to the president and he was the president. And that happened in a work environment where he just had all the cards in his hand, you know, and she's just a powerless intern. So consent is kind of questionable in that situation, and that's why the country rose up and condemned President Clinton for those acts, and that's why it was right to condemn President Clinton for those acts. But, you know, I think in fairness to Lauren, I don't think it's right to say that his entire legacy is trash. I don't think it's right to say that he did more bad than good. You know, it's a shame what's happened, and it's a shame that his music and the bass drop logo and everything are going to trigger these terrible feelings in a lot of people. It's a shame, and it's tragic, and it is a slap in the face to the whole community that it went down the way that it did, and that even after trying to be accountable and after trying to open himself up to these women that feel wronged by him, he was still very clearly gaslighting and manipulating and abusing in his communications with them. I think that that's a problem. But life is not black and white. Lauren is not perfect. Lauren made some mistakes. Lauren made some very serious mistakes, and he had an ongoing, very problematic relationship with women. But he's not the first famous musician to have relationships like that, and he won't be the last. And there are other people in society that are getting away with far, far, far worse treatment of women and children. You know, the church, the president, you know, all these old boys clubs and sex party networks and stuff. They're all, I mean, who knows where Epstein is? Someone's still been using his bank account. Who knows if he's even dead, you know? So we got to be real. We got to recognize that there are levels to this shit, that Lauren crossed the line, but he's not so far on the other side of the line as some, and that he did a lot of good as well as had these problematic relationships. And also, you know, we've got to recognize that the evidence against Bassnectar is not all conclusive. The evidence against Bassnectar Instagram has many very clear misrepresentations of the truth. There are many very clearly manipulative and misleading presentations of the truth on that account, okay? You got to recognize that. It's not perfect. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect, okay? So, in summation, you know, I just want you to know that whatever you're feeling, it's okay. You know, I'm feeling a lot of different things. I'm feeling really sad. I feel used. I feel betrayed. I feel like my musical history is stained by this. I feel duped. I feel like I was naive, and that I was biased in my thinking, that I was not, you know, my judgment was clouded, especially in the earlier portions of this revelation. I feel like my judgment was clouded. I feel like I could have been, you know, I could have believed women sooner. I feel ashamed that I so publicly defended Lauren at the end. You know, I think in retrospect, that was foolish, and that, you know, I just didn't want to believe it. You know, I didn't want to believe that it was true. So, you know, I really, you know, if you're out there and you're feeling like tricked, or you're feeling used, or you're feeling betrayed, or you're feeling depressed, or you're in denial, or bargaining, or wherever you're at in the stages of grief, just know that it's okay, you know. And, you know, if you stood up for the victims, as hard as it is, you know, doing the right thing it's more important than what's easy. It's more important than what's serves your career, you know. And I know my career is gonna, like, it certainly feels like it's taken a big hit from all of this. And, you know, that's how I feed my family, you know. So it's like, it's tough. It's tough on all of us. But just know that, you know, love is the most important thing. Love and compassion is the most important thing. We need to have compassion for abused women, We need to have compassion for marginalized groups. We need to have compassion for everyone in society, including white men deserve compassion. Lauren deserves your compassion, you know? And I think it's just really, it's really important to be compassionate. It's really important to be proportionate in our response. And it's important for us to hold each other up in this time, you know? So, you know, I mean, it's just 2020's just been dark fucking times. Like, my dog ran away during the fireworks yesterday, and we're currently dealing with that too. And it's like, you know, it's just like, reach out to the people in your community, you know, support victims, support, you know, your friends, support your family. Just, you know, let's try and just keep the positivity of the Bassnectar project going. You know, let's try and not throw out everything good with the bad things that happen. You know, let's just really try and hold each other up and try and move forwards into the future with love and with positivity and with clear thinking and level heads and open hearts, you know, because there's a lot of darkness in the world, you know, there always will be. And humanity's got tough times ahead, especially dealing with the climate collapse and other, you know, like we're running out of all kinds of resources. We're polluting the earth. We need to make big changes, you know, across society, not just women's rights, but the justice for the environment and economic justice and all of these causes. We're gonna have to work together, and we're gonna have to do a lot of soul searching and you're gonna have to make a lot of hard decisions, and we're gonna have to do a lot of things together that are challenging. You know, we've got to deal with racism. We've got to deal with this crazy structure of the policing is so problematic. You know, the race relations are so problematic. Our relationship with the environment is so problematic. The economy is so problematic. Our political system is so problematic. So we need to keep in mind that Lauren did a lot of good, and that the fight that he fought against these larger problems in society is still ongoing. You know, his contributions to that fight are very important. Your contribution to that fight is very important. So, you know, just know that it's all love. It's all compassion. We're all in this together. It's hard to be real. It's hard to realize that you were wrong, but no one's born knowing everything, you know. And if other people judge you on being right or wrong all the time, that's bullshit. You know, if you're going to judge someone, you need to judge them on the strength of their character. You need to judge them on whether or not they did the right thing when it was hard. You need to judge them on how compassionate they are to people, how they treat people from which they have nothing to gain. You know, that's really how you can judge people. You know, everybody makes mistakes, but were you coming from a place of love, or were you choosing fear? Were you coming from a place of compassion and positivity, or were you coming from a place of ego and negativity and you know, selfishness, right? Because there is a war on, but the battleground of that war is the human heart and the human mind. And you can't know the future, you can't know all the facts, you can't know all the details, but in every moment we have a choice between fear and love. Fear and love. What force do you want to be the guiding force in your life? And today I'm just saying, choose love. Going forward into the future, choose love. And if we choose love, we'll be on the right side, and we'll be able to build the future that we all deserve. All right? So I love you. Thanks for listening. Stay strong. Peace out.